Well, folks, here we are. So I've lit a candle. I've lit a candle already. Here you go. And as you know, this helps us, reminds us of the fire element, the fire within, the sun, the stars, fire within the earth, and especially the fire that we need right now, as we'll talk about, as warriors, to protect ourselves and our community, our people, and also to protect ourselves from ourselves. That is, from the aspects of ourselves that can do harm to our body, to our mind. So I want to just remind you that wherever you are, that's where you are. You're in a place. You're in a space. We talk a lot about be here now. So be here now refers to time and space. And the space aspect, if you just take a moment and close your eyes and feel your feet touching the ground, or the floor where you are, which is the ground, or your seat where you're sitting. And this space that you're in, this place that you're in on Earth, on Mother Earth, this is the Holy Land for you right now. You don't have to go anywhere, no special location to be in the Holy Land. This is the Holy Land where you are, each of us right now. The sacred place on Mother Earth, the soil below the building that you're in, the plants and vegetation that are all around, the creatures in the ground and on the ground, the watershed that you're in, the streams that run through. Just take a moment to honor this place that you're in, the energy of this place that is holding you, holding your body right now. And this relationship that you have to the place that you're in, the sacred place that you're in, when you bring it into your awareness, it feeds you, it strengthens you. And there's a reciprocity to that as well. You're giving back. And this time, this incredible time that we're in right now, the time of the year, as we're moving towards the winter, shorter days, less sunlight. The earth turning in the cycle of the moon. And in many traditions, it's noted that this time of year, in our culture, we tend to call it Halloween, but it's known as the Day of the Dead. It's known as Samhain to the people involved in the more Celtic traditions. And it's said that during this time, the veil between our world and other worlds is thinnest. Now that's a pretty radical concept from our Western point of view, that there even is another set of worlds, world or worlds. But it's understood that in many traditions, that our ancestors, the spirits of our ancestors, that we say they're dead, it's understood that they live, and that we can cultivate and be more aware of our relationship to our ancestors, to the spirit realm. Now, however your belief system works, if for you that's just a metaphor, it's okay. You think of them in your heart, you feel them, you feel their presence, you feel their existence still in your life. But this is a good time, a good time to call on them, to call your attention to the fact that you have ancestors that go way, way, way back. And that within that ancestry, there are wisdom traditions that we can draw on. And we're also in a time as human beings, contemporary human beings, where we seem to be at a pivotal point of decision making as to whether or not we're going to move in a direction of greater harmony, greater justice, greater connectedness and respect for Mother Earth, or one involved in predatory greed and human manipulation and control and subjugation of other life forms. These two, you could say, polarities of consciousness are at war with each other in many ways. And we have to look at what's our role in that? What's our part in that? How do we relate to that? So as I said in the invitation to this particular webinar, we're going to focus a bit on the warrior. But before, I want to remind you of something. I'm going to put this up here. If I manage to do this correctly. Where is it now? Here we go. I think, oh, share. Yeah, this here. Okay, you remember in one of the first webinars, if you were with me, I spoke of this formula: intention directs us to what we pay attention to, and then what we pay attention to is what determines pretty much what we experience, what we become aware of, and what actions we then are directed to take.
Just letting you know that your screen share is not on.
Damn. Let me try that again. How about now? Is it on now? Screen share, are you seeing intention, attention, experience? Yes, you're saying yes. I don't hear Brent. Okay, so I just want to remind you of this because it's such an important formula for what it is that we're doing. And I wanted to again remind you that in this webinar that I've asked you to kind of try to focus in on during this whole time period, meditate on, contemplate, write about what is your intention, what is your core intention for how you want to relate to what it is that's happening in the world, where you want to make change, where you want to have an influence, where you want to have put your energy. In other words, where you want to put your attention. What's your intention for that? And notice how easy it is to get distracted from that. How easy, very easy to get distracted from, even once we decide on what our core intention is. And then the other aspect of intention is the inner one, where you ask, what is it I want to change or cultivate or develop in terms of qualities about my own life? What do I want to bring into my own life? How do I want to be? What is it I want to be? So those, the outward and the inward intentions, at different times we focus our attention on those, and then that's where we start to see change happening in our own lives and hopefully in the world. So the warrior, of course, in our culture, for the most part, what we think of as a warrior is usually a guy with a lot of weapons and a lot of guns and armor and all of that, and committed to violence. And so obviously I'm talking about it in a different way. In the ancient way, the warrior was a person, a man or a woman, who served to protect and to, in a sense, free from bondage individuals, life forms, communities. And I wanted to read to you a little excerpt from a book by Ralph Metzner. If I hold this up, I think you'll see it. And again, I think I've told you before, Ralph was a very important teacher and friend in my life, died this past year. And this one of his many books is called The Six Pathways of Destiny, The Six Pathways of Destiny. And just to talk about that for a minute, because I think it's important for all of us that then there are different models of this that you might read from different teachers, but he came up with 6 ways in which we might have what could be called a soul intention. In other words, why did you come here to Earth in the first place? Or again, if that languaging of a soul and incarnating is a little bit alien to you or not comfortable for you, I think you probably will recognize that there's something inside you, deep inside you, not from conditioning, but from something deep inside you, whether you want to call it your soul or your heart or your core self, that moves you. It moves you in a certain direction. And when you're moving in that direction, you usually feel like, oh, this is right. This is right. This is who I am. And Ralph's way of describing the 6 possible pathways was, one is the artist or poet. One is the explorer, scientist. And you think of the people you know, think about yourself and what your orientation is, what you're drawn to. Artist, scientist, teacher, healer. He says one that a lot of people don't quite get to, builder, organizer. Think of the people who are oriented, maybe you are, as somebody who's always looking at how do you get this organized? How do you get people together? How do you build structures and new forms? I said the healer, which is also like healing in communities, peacemaking. And the warrior. The warrior would be the 6th. And I took a moment before, getting zoomed in, and I asked myself, what are some of the words that I associate with the warrior, the inner warrior, the peaceful warrior? And I came up with courage, strength, integrity, a protector, someone who's upright, just, balanced, noble. There's a word that is a little alien in a way to maybe modern hip culture, but think about it, noble. Yoga teachers would know that word because I think some of the positions refer to it, right? Isn't that right, Jody? Yeah. So maybe think of, and I'll give a moment for people to just, if you have a word that you would associate with what you think of when you think of what quality the warrior represents. You can just unmute yourself to say a word or two if it comes to you.
Honesty.
Honesty. Yeah.
Unwavering focus.
Patience. Patience.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Right. So
Physically fit.
the what?
Physically fit.
Fit. Okay. Yeah. Fit. Okay. Let me also just read to you Ralph Metzner's description of the warrior. This is the pathway of those who function to protect and defend the integrity and well-being of any natural system. You don't need to write this down, by the way, or anything, because I'll send you a summary of all of it later. The pathway of those who function to protect and defend the integrity and well-being of any natural system. An individual, an organism, a group, a community, a society, or an ecosystem against threats from without, like by infection or invasion or oppression, as well as threats from within, by corruption, toxicity, or stagnation. This is the pathway of the soldier fighting to defend a country, the policeman who uses detective skills and defensive force to maintain order in a community, the lawyer who uses the justice system to fight crime and corruption, the reformer and abolitionist struggling for justice and equality in a society, the activist working for the preservation of the environment, the revolutionary, the liberator, the freedom fighter, the peacekeeper. So those are the many ways in which the warrior quality might find its way. And I think people who are moved by that soul intention might gravitate to some of these careers and jobs in the world, and yet it can get distorted and polluted, you might say, by the culture that has captivated that warrior energy, and by ego. So the other orientation of the warrior that we need to really look at is the warrior aimed at our own mind, at our own heart. And I mentioned in the little intro that I sent out, inviting you to this webinar, about the trumper in your head. How many of you have a trumper in your head? Not everybody? Somebody asleep? Okay, I have found myself to have one or two there sometimes. And what I mean by that is that because you have some relationship to this person, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram, or whether it's a relative or a neighbor, or even just the drive-by, when they've got that huge Trump flag. And I mean, I want to say that, you know, all of this is not just about the candidate and about the election. I think Marianne Williamson said something very helpful to us in looking at Trump. She said, it's not Trump, the person. Trump is a phenomenon. It's a phenomenon that has arisen in our world, that has a history. It has a long history, a very long history. And I think understanding that history is helpful to us. That's where those who are teachers and historians can be helpful to us, helpful to the warrior. So I have found in myself, and this is what I'm one who's sharing right now, that when I encounter these people, it kind of like gets in my head. It sticks in my head, and I start to have thoughts and uptight feelings about what I should say or could say or want to say or do to that flag or that lawn sign or that person who has it out there and who is posting things that seems so terrible to me. It seems so awful. It seems so unfair. And I have found really that one of the only medicines for my thinking mind getting caught in a loop of conflict has been my learning, the teachings that I've been given about the warrior energy and the warrior archetype, the warrior spirit that is a higher consciousness than the thinking mind. It's an energy that comes from spirit. It comes from your higher self, from your soul, from that core intention that that brought you here and that moves you in life. And if you're oriented toward a particular religion, you can use the word, and it might be very helpful to you to say it's an aspect of the divine, of God, or of the angelic forces. I'm very comfortable with that language myself. Other people will say it's an archetype, which has a little bit more of a psychological flavor to it, to people. So it doesn't sound quite so metaphysical. But Carl Jung himself, who coined the word archetype, who developed all the theory, a lot of the original theories about archetypes, said that the archetypes are what ancient people called gods and goddesses. In other words, higher beings, higher than this human realm, that have influence in this world still, to the degree that we open to them. So one of the, you could say, problems we get into when we start to think of ourselves or open ourselves to being warriors in this world is that we can get caught in anger. Very easy to get caught in anger. That the motivating force for the actions that we're taking to protect and defend or give strength to living systems comes out of anger rather than the true consciousness of the warrior. The true consciousness of the warrior has a strong intention, say a strong intention to bring justice, but it doesn't have the attachment to the outcome that produces anger when we're not getting the result that we want to get, when we're not convincing the Trumper in our head or whatever, the alt-right person, the racist, whatever the right-wing person for us, and for them, it's us. When we're not getting the result, when we're not convincing them, when we're not changing people's minds, there's a tendency to get angry. And that anger pollutes the force of the warrior that we're seeking to manifest. And that's why then we have to really look at those emotional reactions that we have, and find ways to deal with them, because they're natural. They're very natural. I don't really think I know any person that doesn't experience anger. Even if they deny it, I think they're probably in a state of denial. The Dalai Lama himself, who many people think of as an example of enlightenment and beauty, beauty and consciousness, he admits that he gets angry. And he I think, meditates something like 5 hours every morning. Thich Nhat Hanh wrote many books that talk about anger out of his own experience and the experience of people in his community. And this is one here that I like a lot. It's called Taming the Tiger Within. And he's talking primarily in this book, it's quotes that are taken from other writings and talks that he gave about anger and how it is that we can deal with it. And I want to just read a very short passage about his suggestion on how to relate to anger. He says, anger is like a howling baby, suffering and crying. Your anger is your baby. The baby needs his mother to embrace him. You are the mother. Embrace your baby. And in a similar vein, he says it in a little more deeper way even. When the mother embraces her baby, her energy penetrates him or her and soothes her. This is exactly what you have to learn to do when anger begins to surface. You have to abandon everything that you're doing, because your most important task is to go back to yourself and take care of your baby. Somebody wants to get in. Your anger. Nothing is more urgent than taking good care of your baby. So this is a very powerful teaching, that your anger is your baby, and if you relate to it as your baby, what do you do with it? What do you do with your baby? You embrace it, you hold it in the consciousness of your love, right? If you have a baby that's having a temper tantrum, any of you who've had babies who've had temper tantrums know how hard this is to do, but it can be done. If you really tap into the love that you have for that child, even though it's screaming and crying and wailing and throwing a fit, you can pick it up and give it love. And that's what he's asking us to do, Thich Nhat Hanh, what he's asking us to do with our own anger. So the warrior, to me, is a inner reality, a spiritual reality that exists within each of us. An aspect of the true being that you are that can help you to engage consciously with those emotional reactions that you have, whether it's anger or fear or guilt or shame, whatever is getting triggered by the trumper in your head, the trumper in the world, or anyone, even the leftist that just happens to disagree with your particular dogma. We see that happening. We see people fighting that basically agree, right? I know some of you are laughing who've been involved in the movement long enough to know that some of the most vicious fights happen amongst the people who actually seem to agree about the basic direction that they want to take the country or movement. I don't know if any of you have seen yet the film, The Trial of the Chicago Seven, but it's a great film to watch. And it depicts, again, some of the divisions and the fierceness and anger that comes up in the divisions. They're divisions about ideas. And when we're attached to our ideas, when we're attached to our beliefs, it's very challenging when those beliefs get attacked. It's as if they're attacking you. And one quality, I think, of the warrior is non-attachment. And that's a very challenging teaching itself, because you think the warrior really wants something to happen. He wants to bring justice. He wants to protect. And yet it's not attached to the outcome of that, because it just might not happen. And it will take the next step, whatever that may be, to be what that warrior is. So I want to now just shift into a more meditative process, and then give you some time to talk about this in small groups, what the warrior means to you. And I'm going to bring this warrior meditation from the Agni Yoga tradition that I was immersed in for, and still am, really, for many decades. And we referred to the warrior. I was taught by my teacher in this lineage, Russell Schofield. He referred to it as the radiant warrior. Radiant warrior, the warrior of light, the warrior that taps into and comes from the light of spirit. And so I'm going to just suggest again that you close your eyes. Just take a comfortable position where you're aware of the way your posture is aligned with your head, your neck, your torso, your pelvis. One of the qualities of the warrior, I think, is upright. Upright. You think of a warrior, you think of being upright. Not stiff necessarily at all, but aligned, balanced. So just shift your attention now to your breath. And as much as possible, be aware of the physical process of breathing for a little bit. Even if the things I've said have triggered some thoughts, or even if your mind tends to wander to what you're going to do after this, or what you're going to say in the small group, don't just allow that the mind does that stuff, and focus your attention on your breath. The feeling of your chest expanding and contracting. The air going in and out through your nose. You'll find, of course, that the mind will drift. It'll go away. And every time you discover that you've drifted, or you're floating off somewhere, or thinking about something else, once you recognize that, you can bring your attention right back. And then you're aware of what you bring your attention to. Nothing else to do right now. And we make another shift of our attention, just the direction of a thought. So you think of the presence of the being that you are within and all around your body, within and all around your body, that we call the soul, the higher self, the true self, the spirit. Every language, every tradition has different words for it. What's common is that this is the source of the deepest intention that you have for being and for being here on earth. This is the source of all the attributes that we seek, that we honor and cultivate in this world. Beauty, goodness, truth, wisdom, strength. So we think of this, and it's a little tricky at first because we have no picture for it. We have no real concepts other than those words, but it's just a presence, like a whisper, like a little bit of a sensation or feeling that something other than your body, something other even than your thinking mind is here. And that's the deepest aspect of the one that you are. Now, in the Agni Yoga tradition, we think of a point above the top of the head as a point of light. We usually start with it being a white light, like a white light above the top of your head. You think of that light, and of course, when you direct your attention to it, as you hold your attention with it, you begin to be aware of the response as that light is activated. It's like turning on a switch. And since each of us are doing it, even at this distance, we're each doing it at the same time, together with a common intention to turn this light on, there's like an amplification. Just bring into your mind that all of us are doing this at the same time, this light. The less trying, the paradox is the less trying, the more powerful the experience becomes. If you have trouble focusing on it, it's okay. Just come back to it. It'll grow. Now that light has all of the different attributes of the soul, and what we're going to call on is the warrior light, the warrior aspect. In the Agni Yoga tradition, that's seen as a violet light, a violet color. It's okay if you have learned to work with a different color or you see a different color, it's fine. If you're new to this, I'd recommend you think of it this way. Think of this amethyst violet light source above the top of your head, or the warrior, strong presence above your head. And then think of it opening and coming down like a shower, like a stream of light, washing around and through your whole body. The more you focus on a particular area of your body, the sort of the stronger, the more concentrated the energy will be. So just feel it on your head and in your head. So what's happening here, and this is where I go a lot when I find my head, my thinking mind, getting all tripped out about somebody or something or in conflict. I let my brain just surrender all the neurons, all the synapses. Just feel the warrior energy coming through my brain, my head, my eyes, my ears, my nose, my mouth, the jaw. And down further, down through your neck, down into your shoulders, and down into your chest, your heart. We hear the warrior light. We ask it to protect our hearts because I think most of all of you here are very sensitive people. And some of the things that are being said, some of the things that are going on, it's just painful. It hurts. And you want to protect your heart. You want to protect your emotional energy. And again, it can be from the external or from the internal. Just like the thoughts. The thoughts sometimes are coming from just media and other places. We protect our nervous system from that. Protect your heart, your emotional system from that. And then bring this warrior consciousness, warrior energy down into your belly, down into the gut. And this is more or less, in many ways, the home of the warrior. The deepest home of the warrior is deep down in the cauldron, what we call the cauldron area of the three chambers. Well, you notice that in Tai Chi and Qi Kung and the martial arts, they very often center you here, and those are warrior arts. The true warrior, balance, noble, integrity, strength. Gives us the strength to be able to stand for what we believe in, what we've tuned in, what wisdom we've been able to garner, what love we've been able to cultivate, and compassion we've been able to cultivate. We have to be able, we don't have to, but I would encourage you to know that you can stand for it. You can stand for it in your strength. We can fear less. You don't have to be fearless to fear less. And the warrior helps with that. And all the way down the legs, all the way down to your feet, down to the bottoms of your feet. Just see if you can get that sense that you are an embodiment of the warrior spirit of your soul, of your beingness, of the divine presence. You are an embodiment of that. You can be many other things. You could be an artist, you can be a healer, you could be a teacher, you could be an organizer. And you also have this quality too. And right now, at this time, in this world, I think people are losing sleep, people are anxious, people are sometimes angry, maybe a lot of times. Everybody's different in how they react. But this is a very, very powerful energy tool that can shift your consciousness and help you to embody the strength that is your true nature. be able to take actions that need to be taken in the times ahead. So let's take about 10 minutes to do a little breakout and share with each other just your feelings, if you can, anything that came to you during the meditation, a sense of that. But whatever it is that's coming to you about how the warrior qualities that we're talking about can are needed in your life, and how you want to bring them in. Brent, can you push the button?
Are gentle. When they're not actually in action, they're gentle. And I began to have more of a felt sense, I think similar to what you're saying, Maria, to a condition of being, a way of being that is very
For you. And I want to just summarize a few things that I was reminded about. One is that, let me go back to gallery so I see more of you. One is that we have to look at what helps us when we go into that reactive place and we lose touch with the clear warrior energy, the warrior energy that has the intention for justice, to bring kindness into the world, to be compassionate, and yet can easily get sidetracked by our emotional reactions. And so one of the things that I want to share that came out of our group, and maybe some of you came up with the same idea, is that we need to learn, and as warriors, one needs to learn about empathy and the importance of the role that empathy plays in being able to have a conversation with somebody where you have very divergent views and you feel that their ideas and their beliefs are like just in the extreme, promoting evil in the world, promoting suffering in the world. And it helps me to understand that they don't think that that's what it's doing. To understand that somehow or another they have come to believe and think that what they think and what they believe and that what they're saying is actually for the good. And one can be absolutely clear and objective that they're wrong, that they are dead wrong, that there's ignorance at play. And at the same time, recognize the wrongness and do your warrior work on those ideas and on those beliefs, and at the same time, feel within that person the divine spark of love that you can still connect to. Now, that's an aspiration for me that I don't fully manifest a good deal of the time. But I find myself able, through the kind of practices that we're working with here, and that some of you may have your own spiritual practices, to return to that, to be able to go to that, to be able to have the energy of the radiant warrior or higher consciousness free my mind of the buzzing insects that seem to be plaguing it when I get into a conflictual relationship situation with somebody. I mean, even in my own head, that person doesn't even know me, but I see something that they've written or I see something that they've put on their lawn. So some of you may be quicker than I am to get back to that empathic place, but I believe it takes intention to do that. So if one of our intentions is about changing the world and the other one is about how we change our own consciousness, I think that a very important part of it is to be able to cultivate that quality of empathy. And sometimes empathy starts cognitively. For some people, that's all it really means. Well, I understand why they think the way they do. They grew up in the South, and this is what they learned, and but they're still an asshole. So the heart doesn't necessarily get empathy just from the cognitive work that we can do to try to understand how a person got to be the way they are. The heart, the emotional nature, your deep, the space inside you where you really feel what you feel, that has to be touched by your soul in order to free it from the reactive qualities that we have in terms of our angry reaction, our fearful reaction, our guilty reaction, our shaming, blaming reaction, all of that. So if folks want to stay on for another few minutes and we can open it up to people who want to say something, that's fine. If you need to go, I want to honor that I keep this to an hour. But I just feel like tonight, the night before what will be the beginning of an election process that looks like it's going to be not easy, very challenging. And I do know people have shared with me, and I have felt it myself, some people are losing sleep, some people are feeling physical problems, anxiety going on. So I want to honor anybody's need to or feeling that they want to just share something with the group. And if you need to go, just a wave and we'll say goodbye. Say goodnight. Okay.